Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, January 3rd, 2026. The House barely passes a package of government spending bills that ends the partial shutdown. One of the bills for the Homeland Security Department runs just 2 weeks, intended to provide time to develop federal immigration agent conduct and accountability reforms. The brothers of Renee Good, who the woman shot and killed during an ICE protest in Minneapolis, testifying in Washington at a Democratic forum. One of the brothers, Luke Ganger, saying these encounters with federal agents are changing the community and changing many lives, including ours, forever. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, announces that former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton will sit for depositions at the end of the month in the committee's investigation of the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The agreement puts on hold House votes holding the Clintons in contempt of Congress for not complying with earlier subpoenas to testify. More congressional reaction today to President Donald Trump's call for Republicans to nationalize and take over elections. Plus, the National Institutes of Health Director, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, answers questions at a Senate Health Committee hearing about vaccines and autism. There's a Senate hearing on Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers and its antitrust implications. All that and more coming up on Washington Today. Washington Post writing, the U.S. House passed a set of spending bills Tuesday that will end the partial government shutdown while buying time for bipartisan negotiations over accountability measures for immigration enforcement. The measures now go to President Donald Trump to sign into law and reopen the government. The agreement kicks off a 10-day sprint for Republicans and Democrats to agree on policy changes on how immigration and customs enforcement agents operate during immigration raids. If they fail to reach a deal in time, the Department of Homeland Security, including the Transportation Security Administration and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, would shut down on February 14th. ICE and the agency's other immigration efforts would continue to operate due to $170 billion appropriated for Homeland Security under the Republican tax and spending law passed last year. That was the reporting from the Washington Post, and President Donald Trump late afternoon did sign the bill into law. Here's some of the House floor debate before the vote, starting with the chair of the Appropriations Committee, Republican Tom Cole of Oklahoma.
Funding the government is not an optional exercise. It's the most basic duty we have in Congress. 2 weeks ago, the House and the Senate struck a bipartisan and bicameral deal to move forward on these remaining appropriations bills for fiscal year 2026. The House acted expeditiously to pass these bills, marking historic progress for our appropriations process and the return to regular order that every member of this chamber wants to see. I share the frustrations of many that the Senate altered our deal at the last minute. But our obligation is not to these emotions, it's to the American people. While we all worked hard, especially our Cardinals, to ensure that all 12 bills would be signed into law before the January 30th deadline, the Senate has put us on a different path. The best choice before us is to pass these 5 bills and the short-term stopgap for the Department of Homeland Security. This approach delivers full-year funding to more than 95% of the government and avoids the consequence of inaction. To continue the government shutdown would be to repeat all the same mistakes my friends across the aisle made in October of last year, throwing federal employees into chaos and confusion while they are forced to work without pay, wreaking havoc on our airports while TSA and FFA are unfunded, putting undue stress on our military families, and causing further instability to the United States economy. Shutdowns are never the answer. They don't work.
Congressman Tom Cole, Republican of Oklahoma, chair of the Appropriations Committee today on the House floor. Congressman Steny Hoyer, Democrat from Maryland, urged Democrats to vote yes on this $1.2 trillion government spending package that funds 78% of the government, including the Departments of Defense, Education, Health and Human Services, Housing, Labor, State Transportation, and Treasury through September 30th, end of the fiscal year, and the Homeland Security Department through February 13th.
There are 5 of these bills who are not controversial, or I suppose which are not controversial. I urge my colleagues to vote for them, to keep the government operating, to make sure that our federal employees come to work and do their job for the American people, and get paid for it. There is one bill in this package that is very controversial. There is one bill in this package that the overwhelming majority of our side thinks should not be in the bill. But I remind my colleagues that bill is funded for the next 10 days or 6 legislative days. And during that period of time, we intend to raise very substantial concerns about the operations that are being carried out not only in Minneapolis but in other parts of our country by the Immigration, Customs, and Border Patrol agents. The Constitution calls upon us to establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility. Many of my colleagues, I know, believe that voting against this bill will make a strong statement about the conduct that we see being carried out by the agencies I just mentioned. Let me suggest to them we need to have focus on that issue, because the other 5 issues that we face, the 5 appropriation bills have yet to been signed by the President of the United States and will fund about 76% of the government, are things that we have agreed upon. After they pass, after they're signed by the President, there will be a lot of time to debate the operations of Homeland Security. And in my view, the laws that they are breaking, the Constitution that they are not respecting, and the human rights that they are undermining. There will be time for that debate. There will be time for that action. Today is a time to fund the majority of government for the American people.
Congressman Steny Hoyer, Democrat from Maryland, on the House floor. The House went on to pass the spending package by a vote of 217 to 214. Mostly party line, but 21 Democrats voted yes, 21 Republicans voted no. The Senate passed it last week, so it went to President Trump, who signed it into law, ending the 4-day partial government shutdown. As noted, the Homeland Security Department is funded only through February 13th. It's intended to be a time for developing reforms, perhaps bipartisan reforms, for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and Customs and Border Protection, CBP. Today, the House Democratic leaders of their Women's Caucus, Hispanic Caucus, Black Caucus, Asian Pacific American Caucus, Progressive Caucus, and the New Democrat Coalition held a rally outside ICE headquarters in Washington, calling for Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to be fired. And in the case of Congressman Joaquin Castro, Democrat of Texas, ICE to be abolished.
Last week, Jasmine Crockett and I visited 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos and his father Adrian at the Dilley Detention Center in Dilley, Texas. While detained, he became lethargic and sick. His father said that he had become very depressed. He was asking about his mother and his classmates, and most of all wanted to go home. But he also said that he was scared of the guards, and he had clearly been traumatized. On Sunday, I took he and his father home to Minnesota. We are all grateful that our prayers were answered. We're all grateful that Liam and his dad are free. But many more children and families remain at the ICE detention facility that Liam and his father were held at and traumatized by. There is a 2-year-old baby in prison there right now. A mother detained with her 2 sons will celebrate her oldest turning 18 tomorrow. She doesn't know if her family will be separated. A mother and father from Venezuela in detention begged for medical attention for their child, who was refused until she needed to be rushed to the ER, and she's a 1-year-old girl. While the warden walked us through the housing units, a young boy walked past me and said, "No school." These children have not been given education for over a year. There's been no education in the Dilley facility for over a year. A mother shared that the water is bad and causes the children to be sick and malnourished. And a girl said that guards are mean to her and don't let her play with the other children. She's now been at Dilley for over 120 days. This is a prison, except not one single person there is a criminal. And I know that's true because ICE told me so. Dilley must be shut down. This is a machinery of cruelty and viciousness that Secretary Noem has overseen. The Trump administration has built, and people like Texas Governor Greg Abbott have been complicit in upholding. We must not allow ICE to kidnap any more children and bring them to prisons where they profit off their pain, misery, and suffering. People are being abused and killed at these facilities. Children's spirits are crushed and their bodies are broken. Congress must put an end to funding this madness and disband ICE. And most of all, Secretary Noem must be impeached and held responsible for her cruelty and disregard for the law. And Americans across the country are standing up and saying that this is not America and that this is not the America that we want. And we must listen.
Congressman Joaquin Castro, Democrat of Texas, at a rally with other House Democrats outside ICE headquarters in Washington, D.C. Axios writing about the vote today in the House that ended the partial government shutdown includes under their heading, What's Next? The short-term extension of DHS funding is intended to give lawmakers time to negotiate reforms to ICE and CBP, but the two sides are far apart. House Freedom Caucus members want a seat at the negotiating table for those talks and come with a list of conservative priorities they want included. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, also threw cold water on adding new warrant requirements for federal immigration agents, a key Democratic command. That was from the Axios article. Here's Speaker Johnson answering a question about this at a morning news conference.
You're a constitutional lawyer. Can you detail the Fourth Amendment protections and rights someone has if an ICE agent approaches their home with an administrative warrant?
How much time do you have?
Yeah, right. Look, let me say this. Okay, so when ICE goes to execute a warrant, it's an administrative warrant, and it's issued by an immigration judge, and that is a sufficient legal authority to go and apprehend someone. They have violated the law. They crossed over our border illegally, and they're here and without any right to be here. Okay, that's what's happening now. The controversy has erupted where if someone is, they're going to be apprehended and they run behind a closed door and lock the door. What is ICE supposed to do? What is Immigration Customs Enforcement supposed to do at that point? Oh, gee whiz, they locked the door. I guess we'll just go on to our. So there's some logic and reason that is to be applied here. Some have complained that the force has been excessive or what have you. I don't know. We're going to figure that out. It's part of the discussion over the next couple of weeks. I tell you what the Democrats want to do and what we cannot do, and that is they want to add an entirely new layer of warrant requirement. Okay, they want to have a judicial warrant on top of the immigration judge warrant, and we can't do that. Just think of it logically. Okay, you've got maybe 20 million illegals who came across the border just in the last 4 years when the Biden-Harris administration opened the border wide. Okay, imagine if we had to go through the process of getting a judicial warrant, an additional warrant to go and apprehend people who we know are here illegally. How much time would that take? We don't have enough judges. We don't have enough time. It would take decades probably to do that. The people who are advocating for that don't want any immigration enforcement. They do not want anybody to be sent out of the country who's here illegally, and that is blatantly what their cause is. So we've got to apply reason. We do have to apply the Constitution. We have to respect it. And those parameters need to be determined. But I can tell you that we are never going to go along with adding an entirely new layer of judicial warrants because it is unimplementable. It cannot be done, and it should not be done, and it's not necessary.
House Speaker Mike Johnson at a news conference today with other House Republicans. He also told reporters he is opposed to requiring Homeland Security Department officers not to wear masks, another demand of many Democrats to vote to fund the department, saying the officers and their families face harassment and threats. Politico article this week has this. For the third time in less than a year, a spending deal brokered in the Senate has House Democrats feeling left out and grumbling about their counterparts across the Capitol. Speaker Johnson was asked today about House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, opposing the spending agreement to end the government shutdown worked out by the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, and President Donald Trump.
So Jeffries told you he wasn't going to help with this. Did Schumer represent something different to you in your conversations with the president? Because it seems that there's a disconnect here. It's hard to square.
It is hard to square, and it's not my place to get involved in their family squabble. But I mean, I think Hakeem has made very clear I think he was upset, offended that Chuck Schumer presumed to speak for House Democrats. So you'll have to figure that out. The Democrats are in a family squabble over there, and it's not of our doing. Hold on, wait a minute. Schumer and Jeffries are from the same state. They're in the same delegation, and they seem to be having a little power struggle between the two of them. So look, I'm not trying to fuel that. You asked me the question. I don't know what's going on, but I can tell you the Republicans are united, and I'm proud of that. And this is the party that is getting the job done. So, yeah.
House Speaker Mike Johnson at a news conference today. Later, at another news conference, Senator Chuck Schumer was asked about ICE reform, DHS spending, and Congressman Hakeem Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. Leader Jeffries just said a moment ago that another CR is off the table, but Leader Thune just said he doesn't think that it's going to be enough time to secure the meaningful reform that he wants. How confident are you that you can achieve that by February?
If Leader Thune negotiates in good faith, we can get it done. We expect to present to the Republicans a very serious, detailed proposal very shortly. Yes.
Leader Thune also said just now that you are negotiating directly with the White House. He's not a part of these negotiations. Are you negotiating with
First, Leader Thune has to and should be part of these negotiations. And second, the House vote just passed, and we're going to present a serious proposal, detailed along the outlines of what we have talked about, to the Republicans, both in the Senate, the House, and the White House, very shortly. Yes.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. Good afternoon. In the House vote that just happened right now, Leader Jeffries and his top members of Democratic leadership voted against this deal that you guys negotiated here in the Senate. Is there a disconnect between you and Leader Jeffries?
Leader Jeffries and I are talking all the time, and we'll be meeting this afternoon to continue our discussion. Thank you.
Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, the minority leader at a Senate Democratic Leadership news conference in the Capitol building. This is Washington today. Before the House narrowly joined the Senate today in passing the spending bill package to reopen most of the federal government and the shutdown that run 4 days, the House had to narrowly pass a rule from the Rules Committee to bring up the spending bill package. That rule got 0 votes from House Democrats, so it took all but one House Republican to pass it. 217 to 215. The one Republican no vote was Thomas Massie of Kentucky. Roll call writing that Speaker Mike Johnson and President Donald Trump had to confront a growing revolt from within GOP ranks on Monday after a small group of lawmakers led by Anna Paulina Luna, Republican of Florida, threatened to derail the rule vote in a push for Senate action on voter ID legislation. But Luna and the other lawmakers backed off after she and Congressman Tim Burchett, Republican of Tennessee, met with Trump at the White House and received what they described as key assurances. Luna said she was assured that the legislation would be passed in the Senate by forcing Democrats into what's known as a standing filibuster, which would require them to hold the floor continuously to block the bill. Typically, the minority party can block a bill simply by telegraphing that 60 votes do not exist to advance the measure. But Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, told reporters Tuesday he made no firm commitment on a standing filibuster. That's the reporting from Roll Call, and Senator Thune was asked about it at a news conference.
Will you commit to putting the SAVE Act on the floor, and will you sidestep the filibuster to get it passed?
Well, we will get a vote on the SAVE Act at some point, and I'm not sure exactly what that context will be. It might be, maybe it's in the context of voting on the DHS bill if something's agreed upon. But there will be at some point a vote on the SAVE Act. With respect to the filibuster, I think we all know where the votes are on that.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune, he was talking about possibly abolishing the filibuster for that legislation or in general all legislation. Another reporter asked, though, about this standing filibuster idea.
Some of your Republican colleagues have called on you to use a standing filibuster to try to outlast the Democratic minority under current rules. Do you have any expectation that you can succeed with that, given the enormous difficulty of doing that? In fact, the previous majority has not been able to.
Right. Well, you know, I guess, and I would just remind people that the coin in the realm in the Senate is floor time. There's a finite amount of it, and we have a lot of things we have to do. There's a housing bill that's awaiting action, hopefully a market structure bill, possibly permitting reform, farm bill, highway bill. You can go right down the list. Russia sanctions, there are a whole bunch of things that could be teed up for action on the floor of the Senate. And so you have to make some judgments, and the conference will have a conversation about that. I've committed to that we will talk about that idea and determine whether or not what the conference's views are about it and how they want to proceed. As I said, we will vote on the SAVE Act, but exercising or triggering a talking filibuster has ramifications, implications that I think everybody needs to be aware of. So we will have those discussions, but that's obviously ties the floor up for an indefinite amount of time with not only unlimited debate, but also unlimited amendments, all of which can reset the clock. So it's not something that it's going to take something that will entail a tremendous amount of effort, work, and cooperation, and at the expense of the other things we might be doing in the Senate. But we're going to have a discussion about it and see where our conference is.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, at a news conference in the Capitol building with other Senate Republican leaders, referring to the SAVE Act, that stands for Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, and would require proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote. Its champion is Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, Republican from Florida, who spoke to reporters outside the Capitol building in Washington about that bill after she said that she got some assurances the Senate would be taking it up and using the standing filibuster.
To chat with you about the SAVE Act, Leader Thune, in the last couple of moments, said that he had made no commitments about a talking filibuster. Is that contrary to what you've heard?
Yes, and I think that he'll probably have to discuss that among his colleagues. But I actually just saw that Caroline Leavitt this morning said that there's support from the president on the Save America Act or SAVE Act. And so I think that that's a discussion that he'll have to have. But as you're seeing, CNN of all outlets reported that Americans want voter ID. Black, Hispanic, white, Asian, it does not matter. Overwhelming support for it. So I wonder, what's the Senate going to do? They have this ability to do it. We're hearing that there's support. Whether or not Thune feels like I'm beating up on him, I'm not. I'm not bullying him, but I'm simply just telling you the conversations that are being had.
Why did you vote no?
On what? I think that the pork spending in that bill specifically is not good, which is why I don't specifically agree with it. So I actually voted against a lot of that funding. So
were you disappointed with the leader's remarks about the SAVE Act today? I mean, you seem to think he gave you something that he says he didn't.
I think that there's a lot of conversations to be had, and there seems to be this consensus in the Senate that the Senate is above sometimes even the will of the American people, and definitely the House. So you could look at it kind of like sibling rivalry, if you will. But I have a feeling that he will be doing the right thing. So I'm not too worried about it.
Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, Republican of Florida, speaking to reporters on the steps of the Capitol building. This is Washington today. News Nation writing the two brothers of Renee Good, the Minneapolis mother of three who was shot and killed by a federal agent in January, will appear at a Democratic forum Tuesday in Washington examining the, quote, violent tactics and disproportionate use of force by Department of Homeland Security officers and agents. Luke and Brent Ganger are among those who are scheduled to speak at the forum, which is being sponsored by Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, and Congressman Robert Garcia, Democrat of California. Antonio Romanucci, the Chicago civil rights attorney representing Good's family, is also scheduled to speak, along with other U.S. citizens whose encounters with federal law enforcement officers have gone viral on social media. That preview article from News Nation. Here is part of Luke Ganger's testimony.
We're here on behalf of Nae's big family and those who loved her. We're here to ask for your help. I was talking to my 4-year-old last week when she noticed I was not doing well. I had to come here today and talk to some important people. She knows that her aunt died and that somebody caused it to happen. She told me that there are no bad people and that everyone makes mistakes. She has Nae's spirit. The deep distress our family feels because of Nae's loss is in such a violent and unnecessary way is complicated by feelings of disbelief, distress, and desperation for change. In the last few weeks, our family took some consolation, thinking that perhaps Nae's death would bring about change in our country, and it has not. The completely surreal scenes taking place on the streets of Minneapolis are beyond explanation. This is not just a bad day or a rough week or isolated incidents. These encounters with federal agents are changing the community and changing many lives, including ours, forever. And I still don't know how to explain to my 4-year-old what these agents are doing when we pass by.
Luke Ganger, brother of Renee Good, at a House and Senate Democratic forum in Washington on the use of force by Department of Homeland Security officers. Sitting beside him, his brother Brent. House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York putting out a statement. Democrats are united in our commitment to compel substantial reform at the Department of Homeland Security. Dramatic changes such as a mask ban, judicial warrant requirement, independent investigations when agents break the law, use of force protocols, mandatory body cameras, and an end to the storming of sensitive locations like houses of worship, schools, and hospitals must be part of any full-year appropriations bill. Absent bold and meaningful change, there is no credible path forward with respect to the Department of Homeland Security funding bill next week. As part of the statement from Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked today by reporters in the White House driveway what ICE and CBP reforms President Trump would support.
What does President Trump want to see happen during this 2-week negotiation period for DHS funding? Is he confident that a deal will be reached? And what specifically is he willing to accept on some of the ICE and Border Patrol reforms that Democrats are asking for?
Well, look, President Trump will be the ultimate decider of any policy changes on anything, especially with respect to immigration enforcement. What I will tell you is the president is never going to waver in enforcing our nation's immigration laws and protecting the public safety of the American people, in his ardent support of ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, who unfortunately the Democrat Party has made a decision to demonize. I heard Senator Schumer referring to them as Donald Trump's Nazi secret police force, I believe, were his words. I don't recall that same language being used when President Obama was in the White House and was deporting millions of illegal aliens from our country using this very same agency and these very same agents, who, by the way, have jobs because of the laws that were passed by Congress. So as for policy discussions that will take place, Congress will have those. The president will decide on those. You saw yesterday Secretary Noem announced that DHS agents on the ground in Minnesota will begin using and wearing body cams. That's something DHS is looking to roll out nationwide, assuming they have the funding for it. So that could be part of the discussion. I know Tom Homan has been on the ground in Minnesota. He's there again today for direct dialogue with state and local officials to move these conversations forward as well. And I think you'll be hearing more from Mr. Homan tomorrow on some of the progress that has been made. So look, we're willing obviously to have this dialogue and to talk and to listen, but we are not going to concede in enforcing our nation's immigration laws and delivering on the mandate the president was given by nearly 80 million Americans to deport illegal alien criminals from our country.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt speaking to reporters in the White House driveway. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Hello, political junkies. Searching for new and original political stories without political bias? Well, search no more. Because, wow, does C-SPAN have just the place for you? The new Extreme Wortman podcast. Every week, hear compelling clips straight from the C-SPAN archives. Iconic, obscure, and everything in between. Inspired by real-life events happening right now. Find Extreme Wortman wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. A few more headlines from Associated Press. President Donald Trump held talks with Colombian President Gustavo Petro at the White House on Tuesday, only weeks after threatening military action against the South American country and accusing the leader of pumping cocaine into the United States. President Trump told reporters on the eve of the visit, somehow after the Venezuelan raid, he became very nice. He changed his attitude very much. Yet bad blood between the leaders loomed large over the roughly 2-hour sit-down, even as Trump sought to downplay any friction. In recent days, Petro, a leftist politician, has continued to poke at the conservative U.S. president, calling Trump an accomplice to genocide in the Gaza Strip, while asserting that the capture of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela was a kidnapping. Also, this from AP, U.S. Central Command says a U.S. Navy fighter shot down an Iranian drone that was approaching the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, writes ABC News, will sit for depositions later this month in the House Oversight Committee's inquiry into the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, according to House Oversight Chair James Comer. Hillary Clinton is scheduled to testify on February 26th. Comer announced Bill Clinton will sit for a deposition the following day, February 27th. Comer, a Republican, wrote in a statement, the Clintons completely caved and will appear for transcribed, filmed depositions this month. We look forward to questioning the Clintons as part of our investigation into the horrific crimes of Epstein and Maxwell to deliver transparency and accountability for the American people and for survivors. Part of the reporting from ABC News. Congressman Comer spoke to reporters about this outside the U.S. Capitol.
I think everyone knows the Clintons have agreed to the terms. They issued a statement last night and they said they agreed to terms, and the story came out. I asked reporters, I said, what's the date? And they said, well, we don't know yet. Well, that's a very important term, is the date. So I'm very pleased today that the terms were the rules of a standard deposition. So they're not going to be treated any differently than anyone else. And the dates will be in February, in the next few weeks. So the contempt motion is still on the table. The contempt of Congress is for failing to show up. This will be their third date that we've given the Clintons. And 3 strikes and you're out. The votes are there for contempt. I think there are Democrats that will vote to hold him in contempt if the Clintons miss this next date. So we're hopeful that they'll come in. We can ask questions I think every American and every curious reporter would have, and then we'll move on.
So are you open to doing a public hearing? We offer to do this in public also. Will you do a public hearing?
Look, it's going to be videoed. It's going to be the subpoena and the contempt was on a deposition. If we get to the deposition and there's something meaningful to have a hearing, if they still want some more oversight, then I think the members of my committee would love to have them in for a public hearing. So we're fine with that. But the issue here is this original subpoena, and the contempt was on the deposition. So if they get to the depositions and they still want a public hearing, we'll try to do something.
Congressman James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, chair of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, speaking to reporters on the steps of the U.S. Capitol building. A spokesperson for the Clintons, Nick Merrill, writing on X, at the 11th hour, James Comer asked for a camera. That's fine. He can have 1,000 cameras. The Clintons will do this publicly. Congressman Ted Lieu, Democrat of California, the caucus vice chair, at a news conference today, said the Republicans' focus on Bill and Hillary Clinton is to distract from President Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Why are Republicans so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton? It's because they're trying to distract from the fact that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump raping children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage your press to go look at these allegations. And I'm highly disturbed that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just got the law wrong. Yesterday, he said, essentially, that it is not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that's actually not correct. If Jeffrey Epstein was human trafficking minors for these sex parties, and you show up and patronize the establishment at that party, yes, you're guilty, because patronizing is part of the law, of the federal sex trafficking law. So Deputy General Todd Blanche just got that wrong, which maybe explains why they aren't investigating all these folks, including Donald Trump. He needs to read the law and investigate these people. He also needs to resign, not only for not knowing the law, but a massive, not only screw up, but the biggest privacy violation in history. They release a lot of pictures of minors unredacted, just violated the privacy of these girls. It is uncalled for what they did. The one thing that they could not do under this law was to invade the privacy of these women now, who were girls at the time, who were victims of sex trafficking. Also, he met with Ghislaine Maxwell, moved her to a minimum security prison, and then got a puppy for her. So for all those reasons, he's just got to leave the Department of Justice.
Congressman Ted Lieu, Democrat of California, vice chair of the House Democratic Caucus, at a news conference today. From CNBC, Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, on Tuesday called on Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard to testify in person before the Senate Intelligence Committee about her appearance at an FBI raid on a Georgia election office last week. Warner, the vice chair of the intelligence panel, said he was especially concerned that Gabbard facilitated a phone call between FBI agents and President Donald Trump after the search warrant was executed. The senator also sounded alarms about Trump's recent suggestion that Republicans should, quote, take over and, quote, nationalize elections. That was from the CNBC article. Here's Senator Mark Warner at a news conference on Capitol Hill.
Regardless of what had been stated, this is not about the 2020 election. That election has been litigated, audited, recounted, and repeatedly upheld by courts and election officials, including lots and lots of Republican election officials. This is frankly about what comes next. It is deeply alarming that just yesterday the president called for Republicans, his words, to take over and nationalize voting in multiple states. That statement alone makes clear that this threat to our election security, the basic premise of our democracy, is forward-looking to 2026, into 2028, and candidly to the institutions that safeguard our democracy. This is about whether these same tactics we're seeing now, or worse, will be used to disrupt free and fair elections. One of the reasons why, as we think about ICE reform, the notion of roving ICE patrols parading around election polling stations is a very real and legitimate concern. And truthfully, as we've seen, whether the very institutions meant to protect our democracy will be misused to upheaval. So let's be clear. It is inappropriate for a sitting president to personally involve himself in a criminal investigation tied to an election he lost. It is inappropriate for the president to advocate for actions that are wholly at odds with the Constitution and 2.5 centuries of state and local elections. It is inappropriate for the Director of National Intelligence to insert herself into a domestic law enforcement operation far outside her statutory role. And it is profoundly inappropriate for either of them to blur the lines between intelligence, law enforcement, and partisan politics. But that is exactly what happened last week in Fulton County.
Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia, Intelligence Committee vice chair at a news conference on Capitol Hill. President Donald Trump in the White House Oval Office was asked what he meant by take over and nationalize elections.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections, and which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest, and if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, you know, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta. Look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
The Constitution says it should be states that administer elections, Mr. President.
Yeah,
That's what the Constitution
you know what?
says.
They can administer the election, but they have to do it honestly.
President Donald Trump answering reporters' questions in the White House Oval Office. NBC News writing the Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, said he was not in favor of federalizing elections a day after President Donald Trump said on a podcast Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. He told reporters who asked him about Trump's remarks, "I'm not in favor of federalizing elections. That's a constitutional issue." The NBC News article goes on, elections for members of Congress are run by the states in accordance with the Constitution's Article 1, which also allows for Congress to pass federal regulations. States run voter registration, counting ballots, and fraud prevention, among other election responsibilities. This is Washington Today. From thehill.com, Jay Bhattacharya, director of the National Institutes of Health, said in a Senate hearing Tuesday that he has not seen any studies supporting the theory that any vaccines cause autism, a break from Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has long speculated on a potential connection and has not discounted the possibility. It was reported last week that Kennedy had completely overhauled a federal committee on autism, appointing several known vaccine critics, as well as 3 new members with autism. That was from The Hill. Here's part of the hearing. Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, ranking member on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, questioning Dr. Bhattacharya.
According to the American Medical Association, which represents over 270,000 doctors, quote, an abundance of evidence from decades of scientific studies shows no link between vaccines and autism, end quote. That includes over a dozen rigorous scientific studies involving hundreds of thousands of children. Last week, you said, quote, the caricature, end quote, of Secretary Kennedy you've seen, quote, in the press is just totally unfair. You have seen him change his mind, you said, when you sent evidence to him. So my question is, have you shown Secretary Kennedy the existing evidence that shows that vaccines do not cause autism? What steps are you taking to make sure that our nation's health policy is guided by scientists and not conspiracy theorists?
Well, Senator,
please talk into the mic a little bit closer.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Senator. I mean, I'm absolutely convinced that, for instance, the measles epidemic that we're seeing currently is best solved by parents vaccinating their children for measles. And I've said that publicly, and I've said that privately.
Please say it again loudly and clearly so parents all over this country can hear you. Please say it again.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to address the measles epidemic in this country is by vaccinating our children with measles.
Thank you very much.
You know, I've also heard Secretary Kennedy say that publicly. I mean, I think, as I said in that, as you said in that quote, I've seen him caricatured quite unfairly. I think the key thing to me is that we have to address the deep distrust that has developed over the last several years by the public.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't have a lot of time. You're right. There is deep mistrust. Do you think that deep mistrust now has something to do when you have an organization like the American Medical Association telling us that vaccines do not cause autism, but you have a secretary of HHS who says the very opposite? Do you think that causes concern and mistrust among parents?
You know, Senator, in 2024, there was a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association that said that only about 40% of patients still trust their doctors. As someone who went to medical school myself, it's absolutely shocking. And that's before Secretary Kennedy took office. We have to address this mistrust, but it has to be a bipartisan effort.
Let me ask you a simple question. Tell the American people, I appreciate your thoughts on measles. Do vaccines cause autism? Tell that to the American people. Yes? No?
I do not believe that the measles vaccine causes autism.
No, I didn't ask measles. Do vaccines cause autism?
I have not seen a study that suggests any single vaccine causes autism.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, ranking member on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, questioning the sole witness today, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, director of the National Institutes of Health, NIH. You can find the full hearing at our video library at cspan.org. Netflix Incorporated co-chief executive officer Ted Sarandos, writes Bloomberg, will testify before the U.S. Senate's Antitrust Subcommittee on Tuesday, taking the stage to assuage politicians' concerns about his company's $82.7 billion deal for Warner Brothers and HBO. While the Senate has no formal oversight of the deal, the hearing is a sign of the intense scrutiny this deal will face in the months ahead. Documentary filmmakers, art house theaters, and nonprofit organizations have lobbied state attorneys general to block the deal. European politicians are calling for a full review. Netflix is the most valuable entertainment company in the world, and it's buying one of its biggest competitors in streaming, as well as one of its biggest suppliers, having won over the board of Warner Brothers Discovery. And with the shareholder vote coming, it must now convince regulators at home and abroad to approve the deal. Part of the reporting from Bloomberg. And here's part of the hearing. Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, subcommittee ranking member, talking about these issues during his opening statement.
Let's be clear, the sale of Warner Brothers to either Netflix or Paramount would have a significant impact on tens of thousands of Americans that work in the entertainment industry and American consumers. I've been hearing from people throughout this industry concerns, fears, worries, legitimate folks that don't have a political axe to grind who are very concerned about the matters we're discussing today and how they're going to impact their lives. So this is not an either-or situation. With either merger, another corporation will gain significant control over what we see, what we hear, and the news we consume. The acquisition of Warner Brothers by Discovery, Warner Brothers Discovery by either Netflix or Paramount or any other competitor would result in consolidation of a sector of our economy that is already seeing significant consolidation. It's something that we should be talking about, and we should be asking the serious questions.
Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, at today's Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing on the proposed Netflix acquisition of Warner Brothers. Senator Josh Hawley, Democrat from Missouri, asked witness Ted Sarandos, Netflix co-CEO, about how the company will operate if the deal goes through.
Without objection, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into a statement for the record from the Teamsters, who have major concerns about this deal, as does, frankly, pretty much every segment of labor, Mr. Sarandos. And what they all say is they're worried that you're going to cut residuals, which is effectively payments. You're going to cut production jobs. So let's just go through a few commitments here. Will you commit to using union labor for all domestic shoots?
We do use union labor.
Will you commit to using it in the future for all of your domestic shoots if this deal goes through?
Senator Hawley, we do use, this is the most unionized industry in America, and we use union labor on all our production.
And you're going to going forward. I'm looking for a commitment.
You have my commitment.
Will you commit to a 45-day or longer theatrical release window for major Warner Brothers films?
Senator Hawley, I just said that I would do that under oath, so yes.
Good. And will you commit to fairly compensating your workers in the industry with residual payments?
Well, our top of market payment has been Netflix's business philosophy since we started operating over 25 years
listen,
ago.
What you have been routinely accused of compressing and reducing residuals, it's one of the biggest objections to labor to this deal. So let's see if you can lay that to rest today. Will you commit to full residuals?
Senator Hawley, I would like to tell you this is a very complicated answer because we prepay.
That's usually on the way to no. That's usually a way of saying no. So I'm looking for yes.
Senator, I understand this is not a yes or no answer.
It kind of is, though.
It kind of isn't because, and we were going to sit down with the unions.
You're disappointing me.
Starting in the next few days, sir, we're sitting down with the unions for new contract talks that start actually in 3 days.
That's a complicated, long no. I would really hope it would be yes.
Okay. Are you asking me to commit to residuals in the traditional form? Because I don't think that applies in many cases. That's why I'm getting there.
All right. Well, I think you've got some work to do on that, Mr. Sarandos, and I would hope that you'd reconsider your position.
Senator Josh Hawley, Democrat from Missouri, questioning Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos at today's Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Antitrust hearing. Wall Street today, the Dow down 166, NASDAQ down 336, S&P down 58. Reuters article, an investigation has identified 890 accounts at Swiss lender Credit Suisse with potential Nazi links. U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley said ahead of a Judiciary Committee hearing on Tuesday on banks' facilitation of the Holocaust. Those included previously undisclosed wartime accounts for the German Foreign Office, a German arms manufacturing company, and the German Red Cross, added the lawmaker who chairs the committee and has followed the investigation into Credit Suisse for years. That was from Reuters. One of the witnesses at today's hearing, Robert Karofsky, president of UBS Americas. UBS bought Credit Suisse in 2023. Karofsky was asked by Senator John Kennedy, Republican of Louisiana, about the testimony of another witness, lawyer Neil Barofsky, who said he was first hired by Credit Suisse, then fired when, in his words, I refused to go along with its efforts to suppress the truth.
Let's be honest here. You're under oath. They fired Mr. Barofsky, they meaning Credit Suisse, which you now own, because he was doing his job, didn't they?
I wasn't part of Credit Suisse at the time, Senator, so I am unaware.
Do you believe in the Tooth Fairy?
I do not anymore.
Do you believe in the Easter Bunny?
Not anymore, Senator.
Do you believe that Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes?
I don't have a comment on that,
Of course
Senator.
they fired him because he was doing his job. And then UBS bought Credit Suisse, and UBS, kudos to you, you rehired Mr. Barofsky. Is that right?
We did.
And he's rocking along doing his job. Only he gets too close again. And UBS has decided to take some of the relevant documents, this is pretty slick, actually, and give these documents to its lawyer and claim attorney-client privilege. Isn't that right?
With due respect, Senator, this is our investigation, which is being supervised by Mr. Barofsky, and we have provided cooperation.
You didn't take these documents and give them to your lawyer because you wanted your lawyer to disclose them at a press conference, did you? You gave these documents to your lawyer to hide them, didn't you?
Maybe I can...
I'm not talking to you, Counselor. I'm talking to Mr. Karofsky.
No, not to hide them, Senator.
Oh, you didn't? Well, why'd you do it then? Out of the goodness of your heart?
No, as...
in the interest of justice?
As my colleague mentioned, we've been fully cooperative. You
haven't turned over these documents.
We have not turned over the documents, Senator, because of the threat of litigation.
Ah, the threat of litigation. Oh, I see.
Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana, questioning Robert Karofsky, president of UBS Americas, at today's Senate Judiciary Committee hearing titled The Truth Revealed, Hidden Facts Regarding Nazis and Swiss Banks. American Banker, writing about it, has this paragraph: amid allegations that Credit Suisse engaged in a cover-up and as UBS looks to expand its U.S. wealth management operations, the largest remaining Swiss bank faces a delicate political situation in Washington. An update on NASA from NPR. A crew of 4 moon-bound astronauts will remain on the ground for at least a month after NASA delayed the launch of the Artemis II mission. During critical pre-launch testing Monday, mission managers uncovered a number of issues that prevented the completion of the test. NASA is now planning a March launch date for the 4 astronauts, 3 from the U.S. and 1 from Canada, on a 10-day mission to circle the moon and return to Earth, traveling farther than any humans have ventured into deep space. That was from NPR. NASA held a news conference at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Here's the Associate Administrator of NASA, Amit Kshatriya.
The wet dress rehearsal we had last night was a critical milestone on the way to Artemis II. That was the reason we went to the pad, was to do this test. It allowed our teams to test all the systems required in the all-up configuration. I think it's clear based on what we saw in real time, we're now targeting no earlier than March for Artemis II launch. The Artemis II astronauts have been released from quarantine this morning. They remain in Houston. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to every team member who worked tirelessly on the wet dress rehearsal and all the critical steps that brought us to this point. Really, I mean, it was an incredible effort from so many people to get to this point. Their dedication, expertise, and perseverance has paved the way for us to enter a new launch window. Every challenge that all of you overcame and every detail you perfected led us here, and this milestone is a testament to your incredible work. We're going to review all the data as expected. We just got off console. Charlie got off a little bit later than the rest of us, but we'll review the data, address the items we saw during the wet dress that need future work, and we'll set another series of integrated tests as we go forward, and we'll gather everything we need, and we'll update you as soon as we can. I also want to personally extend my gratitude to this team here. We're missing some of the key team members, but They did just an incredible job getting through that test last night. We had challenges throughout, but the way they managed themselves with poise and dignity and got as much data as we could while the vehicle was in the test configuration, really just a phenomenal job.
NASA Associate Administrator Amit Karashnia at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida today. Some of the issues encountered in Monday's test run were hydrogen fuel leaks and a problem with a pressure valve on the capsule that will carry the crew to the moon. The newest member of the U.S. House took the oath of office Monday night, Christian Menefee, Democrat from Texas. Roll call writes that Menefee won the special election runoff triggered by the death of Congressman Sylvester Turner last March. In his previous job as Harris County Attorney, Menefee filed several lawsuits against the Trump administration and has vowed to be a fighter in Congress. That was from Roll Call. Congressman Menefee spoke on the House floor after being sworn in by the Speaker, Mike Johnson.
It's been more than 330 days since the people of the 18th Congressional District had representation, had a voice in Congress. When this body took on important votes about whether to cut SNAP benefits, about whether to make it more difficult to access Medicaid, important issues, this district had no voice in Congress. So this one is for the 18th. And this district has a long... I stand here today understanding that there's very, very big shoes to fill. This is a district of fighters, of the legendary Barbara Jordan, who helped overturn a corrupt presidency. Mickey Leland, Craig Washington, Erica Lee Carter, and of course, our two great friends, my mentors, dear friends, who we recently lost, the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and the late Sylvester Turner. Many folks in the 18th District are watching, so to my district, the commitment you have from me is that I will work as hard as I can to live up to their legacy. I will treat this job with the seriousness that it deserves. I work full days, and I will fight as hard as I can to advocate for and protect the people of the 18th Congressional District.
Newest member of Congress, Christian Menefee, Democrat of Texas, Monday night after being sworn in. There are now 218 Republicans and 214 Democrats in the House, with 3 vacancies. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. To get the latest on what's going on in Washington, sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter, word for word, at cspan.org. Have a good night.